Hi, my name is Bridget, and I wanted to present my research to you for the Graduate Student Conference. I am in the curriculum instruction PhD. I'm a candidate. I passed my comprehensive exams over the summer, and I'm finished with all my coursework. And at this point, I'm in the dissertation part of the journey. I'm in L2C2 language, literacies, cultures, and communities, in the PhD in curriculum and instruction. So my working title is Stories as Bridges, How the Storytelling Practices of Sudanese Refugee Women Impact Expressions of Agency, Affect Shifting Identities, and Help Make Sense of Displacement. So I have a lot of words on these slides that I wanted to include so that you could have time to look at them at your leisure, but I might, synthesize and summarize as I'm going through these in the interest of time. So my initial research questions, though ever evolving, are as follows. How can the shared experience of storytelling impact the relationships of resettled families? How do refugee women recreate and reframe their experiences through the act of storytelling? How does storytelling help refugee women make sense of shifting identities, displacement, and resettlement? And how does the sharing of narratives on lived experiences impact expressions of potentiality among refugee women? So again, ever evolving. I fully expect these to change, even more. They already have as I continue, but that's what's grounding me right now. So this project is very interested in uncovering the agency that might come with sharing your stories to an audience, especially that is someone like me who's associated with institutional spaces like a school, especially in a culture when women's voices aren't necessarily valued. And so I provided a platform because, they tell I'm giving them this platform for the purposes of this, but they are the ones that are in charge of their stories. And that is the mode in which they're comfortable communicating in their culture. So, I just want to make it clear that they are the ones in charge here, and I'm just giving them a platform to verbally reframe their experiences. But what I found was that, by setting up these formal interviews and the way they storytell is much different than when they're organically talking, which is something I'll get into more later. But so this investigates the way they could feel empowered and connected through the action and process of storytelling as they engage collaboratively in conversation, art, and creation. This project is focused heavily on transformative learning, community-based learning, informal learning. It's outside of a traditional classroom paradigm, learning through stories. And it hopes to illuminate that storytelling can lead to radical empathy as it encourages cross-generational bonding, which has become really important, the cross-generational aspect, as these women are all different ages, but they're, united in certain experiences that they have. Deeper collective understanding. And it's also exploring the initial formation and story gathering of resources for a 501c3 nonprofit, which has begun between myself, two other women, and one of the participants in this project. So it kind of was born of this project, but unfortunately it won't really have the largest role in this project because due to COVID and a myriad of other issues, our first event won't be till summer 2021. So that's a future study. But I'm happy to answer any more questions you have, of course. So one of the grounding principles of this is kind of to provide an alternative to stereotypical single stories. Essentialized views of refugees as either, a passive victim or a martyr or, so many other paradigms that exist within both literary canon and academic scholarship. So I hope to illuminate the danger of the single story. And if you haven't seen Adichie's TED Talk on that, I highly recommend it. It's really great. And I'm drawing on Freire, as the grounding theoretical framework, critical pedagogy, particularly critical consciousness, as the women's critical consciousness develops through these storytelling with me and with each other over this time period of stories. And in this project, this theory can be applied to the emancipatory power of storytelling. Again, it's a lot of words. You can read them if you have the time. But so I'm using ethnographic methods and a PAR lens, participatory action lens, guiding philosophy. So I think that storytelling is a form of action as the women generate knowledge with each other and learn and change through telling stories. That process is action, even if it's, kind of a different action than actually, going out and, starting an organization, which we will do together. But for the purposes of this project, I believe that storytelling is definitely still in itself a form of action. And I'm examining storytelling as a culturally sustaining practice as the women bring their stories from their cultures to here. Stories act as bridges, social, cultural, and cross-generational. Again, this is as much as I can to let the women themselves be in charge of their own stories. I'm retelling them, I'm rewriting them, but that's why I'm going to be in constant communication with them to make sure that I'm doing their stories justice and I'm telling them right from start to finish. Again, I'm extremely close with them, which I think will make that actually happen because they're not just, subjects in a research study. They're my friends. And I think that, with true PAR, I think that that's necessary. I think it has to be in order to have, to have some, you need to be on their side. I reject neutrality in PAR because, you do get so close to the participants. And that's how I feel. So I just want to be in constant communication with them, asking questions, asking for feedback, asking for reflection as I write their stories, as I retell their stories. I'm doing the study to introduce new perspectives to the research field of storytelling. And these are the participants. Main participant, Najwa, number one. She grew up in a camp in Chad. Her mother and her sister Halima, the three of them are extremely, extremely close. And are the main ones that this will, focus on, particularly Najwa and her relationship with the other two. Najwa and Halima grew up in the camp, and Fatima is from Darfur and Sudan. And then in an ethnographic tradition, other female family members come in and out. And they're very collectivist, very, you're at their house and, 5 of them will just come in and, that's just how they are. That's how it's like they've recreated the camp here, which is another avenue that I'm starting to explore is that concept, that recreating the camp and recreating home and the concept of home. But due to COVID, I have not been able to do as many interviews with the extended family. They call them family, even if they're not technically blood related. As much as I'd like, so a lot of it has just been between Najwa and I specifically, which again, I was talking with my advisor, and I think I might need to include some kind of autoethnographic in this dissertation, which is not in this presentation because it's just an idea that I'm starting to grapple with and how I would do that. But due to COVID, the interviews have been a lot smaller. But again, just got my second vaccine. We'll see if that changes. It's in Najwa's apartment, Fatima's home. But again, an ethnographic tradition, if they say, do you want to go? I'm going. Going to the market, the mosque, parks, birthday parties, holiday events, etc. And they do have a lot of these and will, I'm sure, more as the weather gets warmer and COVID is continually less of a threat. So I've already been collecting data since July, but again, because of the surges in coronavirus, it hasn't gone, as quickly as I'd like to, but I've still, gotten a reasonable amount done with more just with Najwa and myself. But I'll audio record the interviews, and I will have a field journal with me and use, take verbal notes too. Because again, ethnographic tradition, that's what you need to do. Interviews, focus groups, arts-based projects, and observations. So again, my role is key. I think, I keep coming back to my positionality, and my relationship with Najwa has just developed so much since we began this project. I was her teacher, and we were very close, even before this. But then once we started, it definitely deepened through the process of storytelling. Both myself and her telling each other stories. My goal is to continually examine my positionality as well as my own story, and take as much as a facilitator role as I can to let them guide. If a traumatic story comes up, I'm not going to say, let's not talk about this, because I think that they should have the right to talk about it if they want to, but I'm also going to be prepared, with any kind of, and I have a section on ethics in my dissertation. It's something I'm thinking a lot through. Again, I'm happy for any feedback in terms of that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that as well. But I aim to listen with intent and do my best to make them feel safe. Again, because of my relationship with them and the nature of that, I think that works well for this kind of research, because I would like to believe that they trust me, and I think that they do. this segues into using PAR as the overarching philosophy, with the abiding belief that my personal convictions and overarching worldview are very important to this. So it's my framework rather than a strict philosophy, where the participants are guiding the project and we're moving towards this final project of the nonprofit, but also they're guiding the way that this project goes. As again, I hope to take the role of facilitator as much as I can. And I believe that rich, truthful data will manifest itself through the deep relationships that we have. And I think that that's the crux of this study. And again, ethnographic methods is what I'm going to use, because I believe that that's, stories are not told in a vacuum, and which is why I have my field notebook and my voice recorder, as I'm watching body language, patterns of speech, just the way their clothes look, food, cooking, smiles, like just everything. It's a part of that story. So I'm just really observing their culture along with the words they tell. So I'm using, the critical pedagogy as my framework, as I, look at how a culture, the women's voices are not necessarily valued except with each other, and how telling stories becomes liberatory, and how telling a story may correlate to recapturing lost autonomy, as that storytelling itself becomes a practice of freedom. As we recover a sense of ourselves as actors and agents in the faces of experience that make us feel insignificant, unrecognizable, or powerless. I love that quote. So in Najwa's family, storytelling is how the women are accustomed to interacting. So I'm focusing a lot on the concept of home, and again, using that Freirean lens of freedom and liberation, and how telling these stories can be the venue towards that. Exploring theories on the hybridity and identity that emerges from mixing multiple cultures, and if storytelling can be used as a method of unpacking feelings of homeliness and being in between cultures. So my study is an opportunity for women to find agency, study of familial bonds, a study of how speaking out can help you to unpack systems of oppression, and just remembering things that make you happy. The other day they were telling me this story about a mango grove in Sudan, and it was feeling good and feeling this empathy and these feelings of belonging that are manifesting is all a part of it as well. Again, it's situated in organic community-based learning, learning from stories from each other, from ourselves. It can't be rigid and inflexible due to the nature of storytelling itself. It's focused on women. It's not controlled by me, and it's definitely not in a traditional classroom learning paradigm. So it will benefit researchers interested in community learning, oral history projects, preparation for the 501c3. Again, I would love to talk about that if you want to ask questions, but we don't. I don't have enough time to include it in my study, unfortunately. So I've already begun collecting data, and Najwa and her mom and her sisters, we're doing unstructured interviews, participatory observations, photo, voice, and collage as well. And that will, a lot of that's going to be these ethnographic observations that come into play with this, as I'm just with them, and this is Najwa and her baby, who I almost helped deliver. That's another story. But that should speak to, I tell that story because I think that it speaks to the relationship I have with her and with her family, and, how I think this is making all of us really grow in these ways, and we're in this together. I definitely would not say, I don't even like calling them research and participants, because it feels so much deeper than that. But this is Halima and Najwa, and yep, that's it. And where I work cited, I have linked here. And please, if you have any questions, any feedback, anything at all, please let me know. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I would love to hear it. And thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening.